Let's call the meeting to order at 6:31. And the first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the regular meeting held on October 11th, 2022.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting held October 11th, 2022.
I will second that. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next item is audience of citizens. We have some folks here. Anything?
Yeah.
Fire away. Pardon?
How are you doing on the ARPA funds?
Very well. We've gotten a few more requests. I'm expecting one or two more. We're in the dilemma now where we've actually had requests that are greater than the sum of the monies that we're going to receive, so we're going to have some difficult decisions. But, you know, we'll start making those
But at
decisions.
some point, you
Just
guys
like
are
we
gonna discuss them.
Just like we say all the time.
Yep.
Every time you ask, we say the same thing. Yes, we are.
I know,
Yeah.
but I very often repeat questions.
Yeah.
It's okay.
No sweat.
Yep.
Sometimes I don't remember to have asked them, but I know that I,
Yeah, no sweat. Anybody else?
yeah, we're lucky.
Dwayne has been called away for work these last few weeks. His schedule was just such that he was out of state really for the last 3 meetings that we've had. But I expect he'll be back next time. Yeah, God forbid. God forbid. Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up the property on Mislet Drive. You said you'd get back to me before the winter, and
It's coming fast,
it's
isn't
coming
it?
fast, so,
It's coming fast. Yeah, it's funny that you asked that.
It's coming.
I sent an email to the town attorney to try and give us a process, and we kind of need to discuss whether we want to do this in the same format, the same way that we did it last time, which was with lease, and 199-year lease of the property, or just go a straight up sale. I know that there's one of the members on the Board of Selectmen that seems to feel pretty strongly that the straight up sale is the way to go. I tend to lean towards the concept of it was more for as almost as an incubator space, but I could be persuaded either way. But I'm asking her to prepare for both so we can make a decision and move it forward.
appreciate it.
Yep, thanks. Anything else? Okay, we set aside this evening for the next item on the agenda, which is Municipal Ethics Commission Public Educational Workshop. The chair of the MEC is here today, Luther Moen, to try and give us again an overview of what the ethics code is, what it says, and we asked them we asked and they volunteered to do 2 or 3 educational sessions. First one was held a couple of weeks ago. We're doing this one tonight, and the next one will be at your next meeting, which is
next Wednesday.
this next Wednesday, November,
Whatever that is, November 4th?
November
2nd?
2nd. So anyone who has any interest in going to that,
That's
Halloween's Monday, yes.
yeah, November 2nd.
Wednesday, yeah, right.
Okay.
So, yeah, election day is always the first Tuesday after the first Monday.
So really,
First Monday.
we set aside this meeting for this because at our last meeting, it lasted about an hour. So I wanted to make sure we had time for this meeting to go
Do you
through
have the
this.
handouts? Are they out in the lobby?
They are in the lobby. I'll go grab them.
Okay.
Because you can take off. I'll give the floor over to you. In the meanwhile, when you get started, I'll go get those and hand them out.
All right. So thanks, everybody. My name is Luther. Sorry about the mask. I'm in day 10 of my COVID protocol, so I'm staying away from everybody. But I don't think I'm contagious, but I'm just trying to protect you. But I don't like speaking through the mask. I hate it. So, but anyway, I'm the chair of the Municipal Ethics Commission, and I don't know if you're familiar with the background of how we sort of came into being, but there was an ordinance that was established as part of a motion or a valid item that was passed, I believe, in November of 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And soon thereafter, there was a special absentee-only ballot election held for the first commission members. And that ran between December 21st, 2020 and January 25th of 2021 to elect the initial commission members. And our first meeting was February 19th, 2021, which was actually a Friday evening. But it was during COVID, and I guess we didn't have anything better to do on a Friday night, so let's have a meeting. Now we wouldn't even think of it.
Better than sitting home.
Yeah.
So we were sitting home.
We were.
Something to get you out of
Yeah.
So as a group, none of us were attorneys, and we've had some experience with ethics within our own employers organizations and things like that, but not tremendously experienced. So we reached out and got some help from various members of the community, as well as outside people that have experience with ethics. So we met with folks like Ed Casella, who's an attorney out of Old Saybrook and is in the Old Saybrook Ethics Commission. So we got a lot of good overview from Ed Casella on sort of what the Old Saybrook process is, what the hot buttons are, complaint process, a lot of just fielding questions. We also met with a gentleman named Peter Lewandowski, and we've had several follow-up conversations with him. Peter Lewandowski is also an attorney, and he's the executive director of the Connecticut State Office of State Ethics. So he manages the ethics for state employees as a whole and doesn't have jurisdiction over any municipalities. But what's interesting about talking to Peter is that right now every municipality in Connecticut is being encouraged to develop a code of ethics. And out of 169 municipalities, there's only 20 that do not have a code of ethics. And we are one of those. So we are one of the 20 that currently do not have a code of ethics. We also met with Carrie Olson, who is an attorney for Mertha Colina, and she actually put together a really great presentation on as an ethics workshop that was delivered to, I believe, the town of Deep River employees, as well as others in the what's called the CCM, which is the Conference of Connecticut Municipalities, I think.
Yes.
CCM?
Yeah.
So that's what it is. So she was representing the Conference of Connecticut Municipalities when she presented that workshop. She also met with us privately and went through the same presentation and offered us educational experience there. So that was very helpful. And we also met several times with Jane Marsh to review sort of our work in process. She offered some edits with respect to readability, with structure, with language. She simplified some of our sentences, so she was a big help as well, providing feedback. So any questions on sort of the background, how we came into being? It took us a while to sort of get our group, but our charter was to draft a code of ethics that, and we had to go back to what the purpose of ethics is. It's not a vehicle to complain against a decision that you don't agree with. It's there to ensure that governmental decisions and policies are made through the proper channels. And most importantly, it's to prevent public office from being used for personal gain. And that's defined in sort of the section of conflict of interest, what constitutes a conflict of interest. And it's all about when defining what does it look like when an office or position is misused for personal gain. And that's kind of what it is. And sometimes it's a gray area. It's not cut and dry in some situations. And so what we attempted to do is we used codes of ethics from other towns and municipalities as sort of a guide. And we drafted a code and went through and iterated on it several times and came up with this document that I think is proposed August 23rd, 2022 is the copy that you should be looking at. Mm-hmm. And that's what we came up with. We did have a question and answer session a little over a week ago, and there's a couple of questions that came up, and I think I can go ahead and address those now.
Sure.
If that sounds okay. So the first question that came up was, does a volunteer firefighter constitute an employee, thus falling under the definition of persons governed by this code, right? And we spoke to Jane Marsh, and we talked to also Peter Lewandowski, and they both were in agreement that because volunteer firefighters are considered employees because they are covered by workman's comp as well as receive pension benefits from the town of Deep River. So that, by definition, at least according to the two attorneys that we talked to, that they are considered employees of the town. So then the next question was, well, if they are and they're governed by this code, does this mean that volunteer firefighters can no longer work for the town of Deep River according to the language in Section 4, Paragraph 2? So if you look in Section 4, Paragraph 2, which is on page 4 It's item number 2. That was the paragraph that was called into question. The persons governed by this code shall not have a financial interest or personal beneficial interest. And if you want to know what those words mean, financial interest and personal beneficial interest are defined in the definition section. So anytime you see those words repeated, they go back to the definition. It's kind of like a style sheet in a word processing document. In any contract or purchase order for supplies, materials, equipment, or contractual services furnished or used by the board, agency, or commission of which that person is a member of or an employee. And I think the key is that last sentence. Agency or a commission of which the person is a member or an employee. Well, it's the fire department, right? So if the contracting work is done outside of the fire department, it's business as usual. It goes through a bidding process, a decision is made, no issues there. Where it gets a little tricky is that if the work is for the fire department, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, I think it's still not going to be an issue because many times the decisions are made outside of the fire department. You know, sometimes it goes through you guys, right, as far as contracting work to be done. And if there is a question, say I'm a contractor, I need to bid on a job for the fire department, I'm a volunteer firefighter, I'm concerned that this might be considered a conflict of interest based on this wording in this paragraph, get an advisory opinion from us. We can turn it around very quickly, and whatever we say is binding, meaning that if we say it's no problem, somebody files a complaint, we will hold by our word that says it's no problem, right? We'll say no, our decision is binding. We determine up front that it's not a conflict of interest. So does that make sense?
Are you looking at me?
I'm looking at
Yes, you've done your homework. I appreciate you.
Okay. So my answer to that question was, the answer in most cases will be no. It's not a conflict of interest, you know. But the only time you have to be careful is if the work is directly for the fire department. And that's when you have to be a little bit careful.
So for an example, say they're doing a new roof on the fire department, and I bring that up because the fire department does do a new roof. So that's probably the most relevant example.
Yeah.
And you decide to go out to bid, right? And they're sealed bids, so they're gonna go into the selectman's office. Nobody's gonna know what the other bid is. Other people in the fire department are not gonna know. But does that exclude perhaps a contractor, a building contractor who does construction, from bidding on that job? As long as it goes through, as long as they're not just doing it on their own, and as long as it goes through the proper channels.
It's going through an RFP.
Yeah,
process.
right, through the RFP process through the selectman's office.
Yeah, so
It shouldn't discriminate them and eliminate them, is what you're saying. It
Right.
goes through the proper protocol.
Yeah, to me that doesn't constitute a conflict of interest. You're going through the normal bidding process. You're not using your position to influence the decision. It's a sealed bid process. The decision is made out of your hands. I mean, I don't know. John, I suppose you can't speak, even though you're a member.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
I'm a member of the commission also. I think we were talking about perhaps trying to change that language, but we can't.
We can't because this is approved to go on the ballot, so we can't make changes to this
Right.
without.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's this language you're asking to change. You're probably
Well,
asking.
I guess I'm looking just for overall language, because when it says, you know, town officials and employees, the word employees is a little vague, and I know you defined it as including the fire department members because they have workman's comp benefits,
Right.
and there's a small stipend that goes towards a pension. I disagree that they're employees because they're not hired by the town, they don't get a paycheck by the town can't fire them. I mean, that all goes through the department, so they're just regular citizens who are volunteering to do a good deed for the town by coming to emergencies and helping people. And I don't think anybody who's doing that for the benefit of the town should be excluded in any way from making a living, doing the regular job, putting bread on the table. You know, I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
we're not excluding them unnecessarily, and that's why we're here.
Right.
Let me finish what I was saying. The attorneys tell us, we're talking about in the future clarifying that language, because we all agree that it's not very clear. It's almost like lawyerly language that's a little hard to understand.
Yeah.
But what they're telling us it means is that if you're in a position in the fire department where you can award a contract to somebody and you award it to yourself, that's the conflict of interest.
And I think we would all agree that that's a
Sure.
no.
And hopefully under review and everybody on the board has common sense on this ethics committee, that's what they're there for, to
Yeah.
review it.
And I think as members of the fire commission representing the fire department, we would also see that as something
Sure.
that's just completely unacceptable and would be a conflict of interest.
And
And we just want to make sure that if you're a contractor, an electrician, or a plumber, or HVAC, or you're going to do snow plowing work, that you're not unfairly excluded from doing business with the town or even doing business with the fire department, as long as the RFP process has gone through and it's valid.
And I think Luther, just to chime, Luther and John have both said that the way that it is now is what's going to be voted on coming up. We can't change it beforehand, but they have said that they can make revisions and changes as they might need necessary to clear up language. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think you just said that it could be addressed in the future.
We can, and obviously any work done outside the fire department, no issues whatsoever, normal bidding process. And even the scenario you described of putting a new roof on the fire department, on the fire building, goes through a closed bid process, through an RFP process. As the chair of the ethics commission, I don't see any way that that's unethical, because you're competing fairly and squarely with everybody else that's putting bids on the table, right? It's not like you're using your position to, convince the board of selectmen to vote in your favor or whatever, right? So.
I think, if I might, there's two things I'd like to speak to. The first is what Jim was just talking about and has been alluded to, that you guys will look at language and try to clarify the language a little bit.
Yep.
That will not be a matter of you being able to do that as a commission. You'll suggest it, and we'll have to come back to a town meeting.
Right.
Any change to this document will have to come back to a town meeting. And the second is, this is a good conversation for a bigger project. I think that the big projects, I don't think would ever be any concern.
And
I
if
think
it's
the
over
small-
$5,000, right?
Right.
It has to go to a town meeting.
Right, it's the smaller projects that come into question. Let's say there's a window out at the firehouse, or so a window gets smashed at the firehouse, and one of the guys there is a glazier. Can he take that project on, charge the fire department for it in a timely manner without going through an RFP process? And I read this as the answer would be no, but maybe that's something that can be clarified.
And maybe some of our RFP stuff, we still need to make adjustments to. There's towns I work to, I know ours is 5,000, and I think Adam is 20.
Yeah, no, that's something that is way antiquated.
What is $5,000 get you in today's world?
Yeah.
That gets you a window, it didn't
Yeah.
And so, there's stuff like that, and then there's probably some clauses we could put in the RFP where maybe, if it's in within 8%, you could put an in-town contractor.
Yep.
Whatever the bid is, if you're within 5%, 3% of second place, with whatever, they try to support the in-town person.
Yeah.
I've lost jobs just because of that.
Yep.
Within 3%, they say he's in town, and that's the way it's going.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Nick, and we can, I'm happy to work with you on some of that language to do that. I'm happy to bring that
That's
to
outside of
Jen.
all this stuff.
That's outside of
That's
this.
outside of
They
this,
can
yeah.
change little things here and there, and hopefully we'll get changes.
No, that's something that is very, very antiquated and should be updated, so I'm happy to work with you. But back to the point,
Yeah.
it's those smaller projects that are the ones that I think are gonna be more of a pickle than the larger ones, like putting on a roof. That's a big project, and that's gonna go to bid anyway.
But if it's a smaller project, you do have that $5,000 limit, so if it is something, an inexpensive repair, and it needs to be done quickly, and it's under $5,000, at least it could be done in a timely manner.
Yep, but that would be something that could be complained about and would fall under this 4-2, or section 4, number 2, because they are doing it without going through that process. And that wouldn't be up to anybody except for the Ethics Commission to determine whether or not that is ethical or not, so.
if such an event were to happen, and time is of the essence to get it fixed, right? Maybe it's a heater, and you can't lose heat in the fire department for fear of maybe, something freezing on the apparatus causing damage. So it would need to be done quickly. Can they reach out to you as the chair and get an answer? I'm not saying immediately, but within a day, within a business day, so they don't have to wait for you to have your next, say, monthly meeting?
Right. I don't know if I can commit to that without consensus from the rest of the group, but it's something that we can entertain.
Typically, if there's an emergency, it's just drawn between the selectmen and they can just,
Yeah, I mean,
I've had many roads wash out and they say, just get in there. Get it done.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Well, if you have a
What are we waiting
situation
for?
like that, where there's an emergency situation,
That's,
who makes the call as to who's gonna do the work?
Selectmen,
Who?
selectmen.
Within the fire department?
Oh, I'm not speaking of the fire department. I'm
Supposed
just-
to be the fire chief.
They
Fire
changed
chief.
Fire chief.
Yeah.
Okay. Is he a contractor?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's not, that,
What is he?
He's an electrician, but I don't think that's what we're leaning on here. I think we're.
Yeah, this is more, not so much for that, it's just a general, for all different,
Yeah.
a lot of fire department members tend to be
well,
contractors.
that's the problem, not the problem, but that's a small town situation.
It's reality.
It's reality in small towns that, all the volunteer firemen, volunteer ambulance, whatever.
They tend to be some
They
type of
tend to do
contractor.
something else in town, whether they own a business in town or whatever, and I think that's something that, maybe in the future, the Ethics Commission has to maybe look at or clarify or say we're fine, or, whatever, but that's a benefit of a small town, is there's a lot of overlap with people that do stuff and volunteer for the town and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, from where I sit,
And nobody's doing it to be unethical, they're just, that's who they are and that's what they want to do for the town. But if somebody looks at it wrong, they submit this form, and it goes to the commission and.
right, and then we have to make a
determine.
decision.
And I think we're also going into winter, and there may be some things that are emergencies. I think that probably the Board of Selectmen would deal with that, a washout or something.
Well, again, we're talking about a specific situation where a member of the fire department does work for the fire department. Everything else is
We're kind
business as
of,
usual.
we're kind of going off the.
that's
yeah.
right.
Right, so,
I think as, for the fire commission, we're comfortable with that rationale, that it's not, you're not excluding fire department members from doing work from the town.
correct,
That's all fair game.
correct,
It's within the fire department themselves that it at least has to be looked at,
yes.
right? If there's an emergency, that's one thing, we can just, they can discuss, the chief can discuss with the selectmen to get something done in an emergency. But in regular, if something is planned and has time to be done properly, they could run it by you or the ethics commission if a member of the fire department is insisting on doing something for the fire department.
Right, we have a thing called an advisory opinion, where you can come in and say, I would like to do this, and here are the details of what I'd like to do. Would this be an ethics violation or not, according to the code? And then we'll give you a decision, and that decision's binding. So if we say no, it's not a problem, and somebody complains, it's not a problem, right? So,
Thank you.
any more questions on this topic? Like I said, this is kind of fluid, right? So we anticipate changes, and both, Peter Lewandowski also stated that expect the code to go through some revisions over time, right? And so this could be one of those revisions where we clear up the language on this particular topic. So getting back to sort of the process, this document itself, it's basically divided into three or four sections. It's got definitions, it's got definitions, and then the meat of it is they're talking about declaration, applicability, definitions, and then the section 4 is probably the meat of it, where it talks about conflict of interest, and it's all about what would be considered behavior that would constitute a conflict of interest and thus be in violation of the code. And that's kind of what it is. Now, I work for a large company, and we have to sign off on an ethics training every single year. And it's common, most of it's common sense. If it's something that we need to recuse ourselves from, then that's what we do, right? So that's what that document. So that's what this document is. And the other piece of it is there's three other pieces that we're going to produce. And one is sort of the general procedure. So this kind of outlines the complaint process, which is called the general procedures. Again, it has definitions, and the complaint process starts out with somebody filling out a complaint form. And so what we're asking for is, basically concerning an alleged violation of the Deep River Code of Ethics, and we're looking for, contact information, and then who in particular is the complaint against. And then we're asking the complainant, the person filing the complaint, to be very specific on what piece of the code they thought was being violated. In other words, what exactly do you consider conflict of interest? What section of the code does it violate? And what's the evidence to support that? Right? So this is not a forum for complaining against a decision that a board or commission makes that you don't agree with. In many cases, the board or commission has to make a difficult decision that the board or commission feels is in the best interest of the town. That does not mean it's a violation of any sort of ethics. It's a decision that you may personally disagree with, but it's not a reason to complain and try to appeal that decision to an ethics commission. It's all about somebody or the person that's violating or using their position within the town for personal gain. It's typically what it is. And that's what constitutes a valid complaint. So the first thing that we do is we will triage this complaint. Again, we haven't done this yet, so we don't really know exactly how it's going to go. But the first thing that happens is that there's a complaint. There's some stipulations on complaints about how much time we have to review the complaint and respond to the complaint. We have to evaluate and acknowledge the complaint. And then if the commission determines that the allegations, even if true, would not constitute a conflict of interest or a violation of the code, then we notify the complainant of such, and that's the end of it. It gets basically kicked out saying, thanks for submitting a complaint, but even if this allegation is true, it doesn't constitute a conflict of interest, and it gets kicked out. And then it goes on, and I'm not gonna drain this, but it goes into some detail on what happens if the complaint is in proper order and the allegations, if true, would constitute a violation. And then you have to do some investigation to determine whether it's true or not, right? So that's what that part about is. And then the key thing to keep in mind is that up until this time, until a decision is made to, whether or not there was a potential conflict of interest or a violation of the code, it's all confidential up until that point, both from the complainant and the respondent perspective. So whoever is making the complaint is bound to confidentiality, and we say that right on the complaint form. All information supplied to or received from the commission during evaluation or investigation shall remain confidential as specified by provisions of the Connecticut General Statute, Section 1-82A. So this is not a public display of I'm going to complain against somebody and make it public. You're bound to confidentiality until such time where it's deemed that there's probable cause and there's some type of investigation hearing that can happen.
Can I ask you a question? You talked about the fire department, but what about boards and commissions, like inland wetlands or something? I know if you just don't agree with their decisions, that's not a complaint. But I know when I was on planning and zoning, I asked my attorney, and he said, you recuse yourself, and he said, get up from the table and go into the audience. So does that mean that any decision where I recuse myself, does that clear the board of any problems?
I guess I don't understand the question.
Let's say something comes before planning and zoning, and it involves a property of a relative. And I say, I'm going to recuse myself from this decision. I get up and I sit in the audience.
Thank you, guys.
Does
All
that,
right.
does that take care of any problems that might arise on that decision? In other words, are boards and commission members?
So I think if you have a potential conflict of interest or sense of conflict of interest and you're sitting on a board or commission, that's the proper thing to do, is recuse yourself and not be involved in the decision.
Because otherwise, I would be
So
liable
if the
for a
decision
conflict of
involves
interest.
you, if the decision involves you personally or one of your businesses or a close relative, a spouse or a sibling or a child or something like that, yeah, that's the proper thing to do.
Right, so that if somebody did not recuse themselves, maybe their vote didn't make any difference anyway. I mean,
Only if somebody complains.
They're right. Somebody would have to complain.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the proper
But
thing to do
commissions are also,
Right,
but commissions are subject to this.
yes.
Yes,
Just like, okay.
yes, yes. So anyway, so getting back to the presentation, so this goes through the complaint process and you can kind of see what it is. We don't need to. And then section 8 talks about the advisory opinion, which we talked about with some of the folks here tonight, is like if you say, I'd like to do this, I'm not sure if it's, violates the code of ethics or not. Can you give me a ruling on that? And that's what we'll do that. We'll do that as an advisory opinion. And I think we did stipulate some timelines in the advisory opinion where I don't know if we put a time box around that or not. Is that something we can? And again, because we pulled this outside of the code, this is something that we can modify sort of as we go. Because this is the piece, the actual process and procedures is the piece that we don't think will get right away. So that's why we organize it that way. So any questions on the general procedures?
Yes. And I think these are probably pretty simple questions and answers, maybe, but number 3, evaluation and acknowledgements. Complaints will be reviewed monthly at the commission's regular meeting. Now, these are public meetings, right?
Correct. Actually, you know what? That's a good point.
Yeah, complaints are supposed to be confidential.
There should be done an executive session.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
Okay.
we'll change this.
okay.
We can change this.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm just pointing them out.
Good point.
And just out of curiosity, let's suggest that this is a small town and someone makes a complaint and it does not stay confidential. And it becomes known that that person making the complaint was not maintaining that confidentiality. What are the ramifications on that?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Because, we are evaluators and reporters. We are not given any ability to enforce or penalize or anything.
Mhm.
So our job is to make, safer out calls
Mhm.
and report those.
Right.
But it might, it depends who publicized it. I mean, was it the person that made the complaint, or was it?
Well, those are who knows?
Yeah.
And I'm just, it's hard when we're not to deal with specifics when we're talking about theoreticals. But the question, obviously, I think if it was someone on the board that spoke up, then that would be an ethical complaint against them.
The ethics
Yeah.
board.
You know,
Whatever.
but if it's the complainant who just doesn't, that's okay, go ahead. Then, I'm just curious as if there are any ramifications whatsoever, just because they signed this piece of paper. What does that mean?
Right.
Does it mean anything?
And it's a small town.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's a lot of people's concern. A lot of our
Yeah.
volunteers are
No.
very, very concerned about this. So those are just my questions that I'd ask for you guys to think about
Okay.
on that.
What would help there is the more prompt the response,
Oh,
the
yeah,
less time for,
absolutely. Yeah.
And that's something that I think we'll address based on your feedback, Angus, is that your complaint should probably be reviewed in executive session as soon as possible.
Oh, yeah. I think it says that, doesn't it? Within 15 days?
Right.
Yeah.
And that the privacy or whatever, the secrecy of it should be maintained.
It should-
Like,
yes.
There's no teeth to that, but it's true, it should be stressed that this is a surprise.
Well, and maybe I need to bold this at the bottom right here and make this a little more emphatic. Basically, it has to be confidential.
Yeah. Okay, those are my questions.
Any other questions on the process?
so somebody's convicted of
No, we
conflict
don't-
of interest.
we don't-
Do we put them in the stocks in the middle of town?
There's a little cell downstairs.
Oh, okay.
So I was helping with the audiovisual for the celebration on Sunday, and I was looking for some microphones backstage, and I opened up one of the curtains in the back, and there's this giant pumpkin head mannequin staring me right in the face, and I just about jumped out of my skin. Scared the living whatever out of me. But anyway, no
No stocks,
stocks, no public humiliation.
no dunking.
No dunking.
That's
So-
too bad. We need fun things to do.
So that's the general procedures, and then, so the last document, that it's still in a little bit of a draft form, is, and this is something that Joshua Ruddy, one of our Ethics Commission members, is working on. It's called the Citizens Guide. And this is meant to be sort of more of a layman's explanation with less legalese on what is ethics, what does it mean, what is a conflict of interest, what do you do when you think there's a conflict of interest, how do you file a complaint, that kind of stuff. And so the idea of this is to, more in more plain English, to describe what constitutes an ethics violation and what doesn't, so that we avoid frivolous complaints. That's the whole idea of this.
Education's key.
It is.
A couple of people have come up to me and asked, since I'm a selectman and Nick, who is my nephew down here, does work for the town, is that an ethics violation? He's my nephew and I'm a selectman. If I have to do any voting with regards to him, I recuse myself and all that. So I think there's a lot of confusion. Again, like we talked, it's such a small town.
Exactly.
That there's people that do multiple things in town. Some work for the town, some work, so that's the key thing is one of the key things I think is the education as much as possible.
Yeah.
That's why we're having these.
Yep.
So before
And then-
people vote on this,
Yep.
they should be able to.
And then maybe afterwards, it's just a continual education process too, after it's done, might not be a bad idea. But anyway.
My guess is there's going to be an explosion of complaints initially, because folks don't understand it. We've already seen a letter to the editor in the paper that, there's a huge ethics violation up at the quarry. But it's not anything that fits with this. He just thinks it shouldn't be blasting. So he's going to be first in line according to the newspaper. But I think that will be dismissed. So that's what I envision is that, and that's what's happened in other communities as part of the process Luther was describing when we spoke with other communities. Initially, there were a lot of complaints because folks are upset about decision making. As they learn the process and learn what it actually means, those complaints will drop off, and many communities, the commission meets just to say no complaints this month.
Yeah.
So. And I don't know, I think some communities don't even meet monthly, they just meet quarterly.
They meet quarterly. I think Old Saybrook is meeting quarterly, unless they get a complaint, and then they'll have an executive session and determine, go through the process. So,
Well, Luther, I appreciate your coming.
well, thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
I will say once again, you guys have worked very hard over a course of 2 years to get this in front of the town.
I feel like taking the bar exam.
Well, that's what I think that's what I think is worth noting, that none of you are attorneys, none of you are in this field, and you took it on, and you should be commended for taking it on.
Absolutely.
It's a big task, a daunting task, and as anyone who works in public service will know, you're not going to satisfy everybody, but do your best, and you guys have, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. Great, all right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
All
Lou.
right. Let's move this squeaky chair back.
Yeah, no, mine's a squeaking oil here.
Thank you, Luther, and thank you, John, and everybody on the commission.
Absolutely.
And you're going to have one more of these sessions
Next
on
Wednesday.
Wednesday,
a week from-
November 2nd.
a week from tomorrow,
Yep,
and
And,
we will probably be back in this room
yep,
at 7 o'clock.
okay.
That's our, we're not 6:30 people, we're 7 o'clock.
Yeah, that sounds good, and, you know, folks that have any questions or concerns should come to that meeting.
Absolutely.
That's the time to learn a little bit more and to have your questions answered before the vote. That's all we have on the agenda. Just to keep people in the loop, there are two things that I want to talk about at the Board of Finance meeting. The first and the most important is the, well, maybe not most important, but the first.
Am I okay to-
Yeah, please,
Okay.
if you're so
Thank you.
fine,
Thanks
thank you.
again, Luther.
You know, we applied for, we had a resolution and we applied for a steep grant for the replacement of the gazebo, the restrooms and the pavilion out at Platwood Park, both of which have been under constant repair for the last
Yeah.
few years. We were awarded that grant for $433,000, which really, if you add up the two grants we've gotten this year for our parks, we have $433,000 plus $325,000 for playground equipment around town.
Yep.
So that really adds up to about $750,000 in state funds for us to help improve our grants. The STEEP grant requires a minimum of 20% participation by the town. So I'm going to ask the Board of Finance to move to the town a request for $100,000 to supplement that STEEP grant, so that we will be spending in order to replace the bathrooms and the pavilion up at Platwood. I was astounded at how expensive the restrooms are. I went up and looked at the prefab restrooms about a couple of weeks ago, and they're beautiful, and it'll be really nice. I mean, not beautiful, but they're very nice.
Yeah.
And they're spacious, and they're much more
Handicap accessible?
handicapped accessible. And we are thinking about, anyway, there was one up there that we saw that had a place a window so you could sell goods out of. So you put the restrooms on the one side, the other side's got an opening in it, so you could have a snack bar kind of thing. So we can actually put some water in that snack bar, so we
Right.
can actually really prepare foods there as well, because that will connect, and if we put that in the
That'd
right
be
place,
nice.
it can connect to the restroom or to the septic system, as opposed to where the snack bar is now,
Is
where
now
it
it's-
can't connect
right,
to the
it's too
septic
far away.
system. So it will, we can't use it for that. And I think the Parks and Recreation has been asking for something that they can do that with, similar to what they do over at Devitt's
Right.
for a long time. So
That's neat.
that's kind of what we're leaning towards anyway at this point.
I had a friend who was in a wheelchair, and we went to something at Essex Meadows, where you'd think they'd have really good. But she said the bathroom was not, the handicap was not big enough for her to get her wheelchair in,
Yeah.
so she could transfer to the
wow.
toilet.
Mhm.
And, I mean, that's something you may not
Yeah, it's,
think about.
Well, you know,
having to-
it's something we have to think about now, especially if we're getting federal or state funding. Now, we try to think about it in everything we build new anyway, but,
I mean, I wouldn't have thought that she couldn't get into
No.
that handicapped.
well, it's hard for us to know, those of us that are not so afflicted, but we do have to consider that in every decision that we make, especially when it's state and federal funded. So those have been taken into consideration. So that's going to happen at the Board of Finance meeting.
Okay.
And also, there's some legislation a year ago that I don't know how many folks here are inclined to purchase the little nips. Sometimes you see them in Christmas stockings and things, little nips of booze at the package store. Well, those have become a real bane on society, if you will, because folks will have a nip and throw them out the window on the side of the road. As a land surveyor, I can tell you, there are a lot of nips along the side of the road. What the state did is they charged a tax on each of those little nips that goes, the package stores now have to, either the package stores or the actually distributors have to record how many nips are sold in every community, and that community gets a percentage of that tax that goes into the state. That money is, it's recommended, they don't require, but it's recommended that we use that towards recycling, education, or recycling, or cleanup, or something like that.
Cleanup of the nips.
Yeah. So we've been asked by the Sustainable Connecticut to use the NIPS money for now, to start a program that falls into the things that we're doing up at the transfer station, a food scraps program at the Deep River Elementary School cafeteria. So they can collect the food scraps in the kitchen. Those will be picked up, and I think that's a great place to start with that kind of a thing. There's a tremendous amount of food scraps that go to waste into the garbage,
And the kids can
that
bring
costs-
that knowledge home.
Yep, and that will cost the school a lot more money. So I think it's a good thing. So we're going to ask the Board of Finance to do that too. Similar to what we did with the opioid.
Right.
And directed that money that we get from the state towards the Tri-Town. This will direct it towards sustainability until they get that program going, and then we'll figure out something else to do with it. I see the Board of Finance is starting to show up, so I've got nothing else. If you've
No,
got
I don't have
anything
anything.
else, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn at 7:18.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, everyone. This is the regular meeting of the Deep River Board of Finance, the regular October meeting. I'm not expecting any unregular meetings, but this is the regular meeting of the Board of Finance. First item should be, I apologize, I seem to be coming down with some exotic disease. And it makes me speak and hear in odd ways. So, but anyhow, that is, it's not, hopefully you're agreeing it's not my normal voice. Call to order. We're in order. For next item would be approval of minutes from the regular meeting held on September 22nd. Do I have a motion to accept? Or, Two. Thank you very much. Do I have a second? I think I just glanced at them before the meeting, I think there will be a couple items on that agenda, which we will logically be chatting about also tonight. Third item, audience of citizens. Citizens, have you any, no? Okay. Greg is looking up, he's thinking. But absent Greg speaking, we will move forward, okay? Treasurer's report, Tom.
Thank you. I know it was, actually, you did receive it. I think Kathy had sent it out. And I also have the hard copies in front of you, so. Let's see. Well, the good news is that our interest rates have gone up and went up 35 basis points, so we're at 1%. But having said that, we have pretty sizable balances in our municipal sweep account, money market accounts, over $6 million, so that will add up pretty fast. So I'm happy to see that. If you look at our general fund account balances, total figure right now is $8,494,420. If I take away the capital improvements borrow monies, because that was from a loan that we put into an account with Liberty, we're at $7,245,319. And if I compare that to last month, we have less, $1,071,000 less than last month. And if I compare it to last year at this time on October 25th, we're up $885,000. Just regarding the capital improvements borrow account, that's a loan that we have with Dime Savings Bank. It opened up June 27th for $1,425,000. you'll see that the balance right now is $1,249,100. So we've been using some of those monies. We've used $175,899 of that total. Most of that actually was $150,000 for a progress payment due on our pumper contract back on August 18th, 2022. And that interest rate has also gone up 35 basis points to 0.95%. I did do 2 wire transfers during the last month from September 26th to October 24th. One was on September 26th for $300,000. The other one was on October 19th for $800,000 for a total of $1,100,000. That was from the Liberty Bank money market account to our Citizens Bank general fund account. If you look at the bottom of the page, our total account balances we're at $10,703,095. If I take away the capital improvements borrow and our ARP fund monies, that gives us $8,138,477. If I compare that to last month, we're down $1,021,000. If I compare that to last year, we're up $1,047,000, so a year from this time. And regarding our ARP funds, the American Rescue Plan account, we finally received all the monies that we're going to get. We have $1,314,908 that we've received. So our first installment was back on July 14th of 2021. We received $657,454.22. And then on August 16th, we got another installment of $225,953. And then just recently, we received another installment on October 4th for $431,500. So, and those last 2 installments together equals $657,454, which is the same as when we received that first installment back on July 14th of 2021. So you'll see that the balance right now is $1,315,516 in that account. And we've received $608.21 as far as interest goes. So again, we've all the monies are in, so it's up to us to see what we want to do with those monies.
Yep.
Okay.
Tom, is that interest rate at Essex Savings correct?
Yes, it is.
With the movement up in interest rates, which are reflected above,
It went up from 0.08 to 0.09. And actually, when I had looked at Liberty Bank, they were probably about, at the same time when I opened this account, they were like 0.110. So there's not much movement there.
do you expect there to be movement there? I mean,
Well, yeah,
interest rates
I presume it, will go up a bit. We're not gonna, as far as using those funds, I don't know what our timetable is for
Well,
that.
we've already committed 300,000 of it, and we will commit it, I think we're gonna commit to most of it pretty quickly.
Okay, so thanks.
So we're trading off interest rate for the ability, for liquidity, right, to be able to get to it quickly?
Yes, it's liquid, all liquid monies.
Okay. Got it.
Our education equalization grant monies, the ECS monies, for this fiscal year, the first payment that we'll receive is actually due on October 29th. So we'll receive a quarter of our total. The total that for the fiscal year is $1,671,457. So we'll get $417,864.25. And so that will be coming in the next week. The next payment after that will be January 29th. We'll receive another quarter of that total, and then on April 30th will be our final total, which is 1/2 of the total amount so it'll be $835,728. Regarding our next bond issue payment, the next payment that we have due is with the Kirtland River Street Sewer Project through the USDA, Department of Agriculture, that originated back in 2016. It was for 40 years, so it goes from 2016 to 2055. The principal amount was $2,910,000. And the interest rate, 2.625%, it's a fixed rate. And our annual principal payment is $118,379. So we'll be making our 7th payment in December, and the balance will be $2,640,926 after that payment's made. So again, right now, most of that is going toward interest. We have $49,054 that goes to principal and $69,324 that goes to interest. So that will be our next payment due on that. And that's it.
2055 it comes to, Tom?
What's that?
2055 it comes to?
Yes, 2055. Not sure I'll be
That
around.
used to sound like a long way away, but,
We look forward to it.
That's why we're having fun.
that is exactly. I worked for a fellow who, when he was young, issued a bond for Northeast Utilities. And that 30-year bond, 35-year bond came due. And he announced his retirement on the day. He thought it seemed appropriate. So, Tom, in 55, you will have.
You don't have to worry about me.
So, excellent. All right.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Tom? Tom, the pattern in the state education funding has been a pattern that you have been discussing for years. I assume that pattern is been there for a year, quarter, half, right?
Yes.
Seems an odd pattern.
Yes.
I mean, have you ever heard anyone offer an explanation for why?
No idea, do you? How they pay that out, I'm not sure. It's always been that way as far as
I don't,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Do other towns? I assume we get the same.
Yeah, this would be the
everybody else?
same as other towns too, the same payout schedules.
It's an interesting question. Okay. Angus, recommendations of selectmen or updates of selectmen, however you wish to describe it.
Well, it says in the agenda recommendations, so that's what we'll go with.
Recommend the way.
We will talk. The first and probably the most substantial of these is our STEEP grant that we, you guys are probably aware, we had a resolution a month or so ago, or 2 months ago or so. We made an application for a STEEP grant to replace our bathrooms and pavilion up at Platwood Park. We were awarded that grant of $433,000. Part of that award requires a minimum of 20% participation by the town. The estimates that we have put that project at about $500,000. This will give us some latitude because the state is asking us for a $100,000 commitment. While alone, that's I think it's worthwhile. I also think it's appropriate to note that we also received a $325,000 grant from the state to improve our playground facilities at all 3 of the parks, including the Deep River Elementary School, Platwood, and Devon. So in essence, we've received $750,000 from the state of Connecticut with a requirement of $100,000 participation from the contribution from the town in order to really bring our parks up to snuff and really beautify them and make them safer and more attractive to our community. I'm asking the Board of Finance to move that to the town meeting, to a request for $100,000 to supplement the $433,000 grant from the STEEP grant that we were awarded this year.
Is the steep grant we got a long time ago for computers?
Yeah.
Someday will be signs.
Oh, yeah.
There was initially an expectation the town would be required to contribute. I think it's 50, but I'm not sure, okay? We have not been able to get that done, but are we still needing to put that 50 in?
That was not required. At this point, I don't believe that we need to do that.
That was always your answer, by the way.
If we do, we will come back to you and we'll go to the town. But at this point, it's been, working with Steve, and initially, the fellow was, don't worry about that, let's just get this going. It was not part of that grant. Once that gets, if we do, we'll come back. If we don't, we're going right now. We've got estimates, and I expect that the computers are coming in now. They're being built right now for us. The program for the Zoom capability with a bigger screen and that kind of thing, that is going out to bid shortly. The signs, the street signs, the remote street signs is also going to bid. We're just looking for assistance in preparing an RFP for that. But at this point, the advice from OPM has been that we don't need that 50,000.
So that we do not need to make a
Thus far.
contribution on that prior one.
Yeah.
This one we do.
This was part of the application. You would not get that, we would not get that grant without that
It
participation.
was a condition of the application the town was going to put in
Yep.
20%.
Yep.
If costs come in lower, which is hard to imagine in today's world, but I assume it would just be a pro rata reduction of what the town.
If costs come in lower, then it will reduce the town's contribution. The state is committed to this,
Okay.
this much money.
So we're out. So if it comes in lower, we still get the state grant,
And we
it does
contribute
reduce the
less.
town. So that could work out. All right, Board of Finance, questions, concerns? Due to lots of things, I am uncertain as I sit here right now what our surplus is and will be. I did an estimate in July. I thought that the surplus out of last year's ending June 30 would come in, actually I was a bit high, saying it would come in about 6. If you remember, at the request of our auditors, we were setting up a capital account. Some of what I was counting as a capital account, some of what I was arguing was surplus, may go into a capital account, but I don't think so, because I assume that those fire trucks, et cetera, would be spent. So I believe we have enough money to handle $100,000, but I cannot give you absolute assurance, but I'm pretty certain we will have more than ample of $100,000.
I'm confident that we do. And if we remember, when we approved the budget, the current budget, we took some of our surplus to buy down some of the mill rate. But even after that, we were still a little bit above our benchmark of 13%. So I'm confident that we have money in our surplus.
And I am confident too, I just can't give you an exact
can't
dollar
give you
amount
exact, right.
at the moment. So, anyone want to ask questions? Anyone want to move forward at this time? What's the timing on the grant? Now?
Right now, I was actually on the phone with the state this morning for a good 30 minutes, just trying to get the paperwork done so we can sign our contract with the state. That can't be done until we have this approved. But we are already beginning the planning process. We're meeting tomorrow to start some planning as to where things are going to go. I don't think it's our best interest to just remove the existing and put the other ones there. I think we can manipulate the location a little bit more to take better advantage of the grounds up there. But we're having some architects and engineers look at that.
Are they looking at all 3 sites?
No, for this, the Steve grant is just the restrooms and
Okay,
the
gotcha,
pavilion,
sorry.
and that's
Okay.
just up in Flatwood.
Okay.
I had hoped that we would be able to, that $500,000 would cover both parks, but it does not.
Oh,
That's what I said.
sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
You went through this, and I've forgotten already. Which one of the grants, the matching grant, or the other one, that is playground equipment?
The playground equipment is not the matching grant. The playground equipment is a $325,000 loan, or not loan, grant from the Office of Policy and Management.
If we have $10,000 in our budget, it's for park upgrades, will this grant replace what we were intending to do, or will it be in
No.
addition to?
It would be in addition to.
Okay.
Those park upgrades have to do with actually with the ball field up at Platwood. When that was constructed, there were some, I'll call them minor, but if you're trying to pay attention, there were pretty major errors made with the baselines and things like that, and the irrigation system was almost on the edge of the base path, which could be dangerous if the kids are, you know, running on the edge and stuff. So we're making some improvements to that as well.
That's so important. All right, Board of Finance, do I have any interest in sending $100,000 to the town?
I move.
I'll second it.
Second. All right. First, second, any further discussion?
Seems like it's a really good deal with all that grant money hanging out there, so.
I say do it. Take it. The state has been rather generous to us in the last
Couple of years, yeah.
hasn't it?
Yeah.
Strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
I think the state is flush, and our legislators have worked pretty hard for us to get this stuff going.
We certainly have.
Great.
And it has absolutely no relevance to what we're talking about, but what was it, 2-3 years ago, we thought that the state would not have any money, and we had to go get approval if we needed a borrowing, but who knows what the future will hold. So, all Board of Finance, all those in favor of sending to the town a request for $100,000 out of surplus to meet the obligation for the steep grant, I said that correctly, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, all those against? All right, it has passed.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, that's great. We'll move that, I expect we'll have that meeting sometime in late November. The next thing I have is not quite as consequential, although it might add up over time. We'll see what the drinking habits of the folks at Deep River are. About a year ago, the state legislature put in place a tax on the little nips that get bought. There were complaints throughout the state about the fact that they were landing on the sides of the roads and were a detriment to most communities. The state thought that if we can't really ban the sale, so they said, put a tax on that, and every community, the distributors of those nips have to pay attention to how many are sold out of each community, and the related percentage of the money collected from that tax will go to that community, directly related to the number of nips that are sold in that town. That money, we've received 2 checks thus far, one for, actually 4 checks, one for $6, one for $3,668, another for $6, and the most current was $4,460. It adds up to about $8,141. The state has requested, they're not requiring, but they've requested that we use that money for some sort of recycling or cleanup or some sort of waste management program. I've been participating for the past year in an organization that first selectmen and mayors have volunteered for to monitor and to pay attention to how the state is managing waste throughout the state. At each one of these meetings, towns are asked, what are you doing with your NIPS money? And if folks have come up with a program, they'll suggest things. Some folks are buying safety equipment for a group, to a volunteer group to walk along the side of the road and clean up the sides of the road, but you gotta get volunteers for that. Other towns are putting it in, just like we did with Tri-Town. Some folks are putting the money into their youth services bureau for some of their programs. One of the members of the Sustainable Connecticut group learned about this and asked if we could contribute this money, at least for the first year, to establish a food scraps program at the elementary school kitchen. The elementary school has been trying to get that program going. They are fully on board to do it. They just were trying to figure out how to fund it. This money would be good seed money for them to be able to establish that and see how it works. It's going to start in the kitchen, and if it works in the kitchen, it will expand out into the general cafeteria. I think it's a good idea. I think it Number one, it will reduce the amount of waste coming out of, it won't reduce the amount of waste, it would reduce the amount of garbage that gets collected from the school and ultimately will reduce that bill. Just like all food scraps programs, it won't initially reduce the amount of money that they're spending on food, on garbage. It will just diversify it and will take a substantial amount of garbage out of the transfer waste to Ohio and Pennsylvania. I do think it's a good idea. I don't think we should do similar to, I don't think we should do what we did with the opioid money and just say, as checks come in, we'll distribute it to that. I think we should establish it for the first year, see how the program goes, and then next year we can make the same decision again if it's going well, or if we have other programs that might be better suited for this. But that's the request, is to funnel this money. We've got $8,141.52 towards a food scraps program at the elementary school.
What would it actually be used for in that context?
It would be used for,
Or how would it work?
yeah, I'm trying to think of what the proper word language would be, and it's just getting old kind of thinking. Different receptacles would be utilized in the kitchen to separate food scraps from general packaging and other kind of general garbage. That will go into a container that will be collected by a group called Blue Earth, who are out of, I want to say Southington, but in that part of the state. They will come once a week and collect that, bring that up to their facility, and it will go into an anaerobic digester where it becomes energy or compost.
Do we have to pay them to come collect it?
That's what this one would be.
That's what it's for.
It would be for the initial investment in receptacles and signage and things like that.
Okay.
And then after that, it would be towards their collection of the waste.
I was trying to understand.
Yep.
Where
No, thank you.
the
That's-
money was going.
That's a good question, and I should have put that in the explanation.
Any other folks?
I think it's a good idea.
And I have shared with Angus, and it should be heavily discounted outside. I get uncomfortable taking specific revenue streams and identifying with a certain tax. Small as it is, but I just get uncomfortable. They're small and noble goals, I just get.
No, I understand, but it's an interesting thing that I have not seen before, where these monies are distributed with the strong suggestion from the state that they be utilized to somehow or another assist in whatever that fund is coming from, like the opioid settlement. They're suggesting, strongly suggesting that we utilize that fund to try and alleviate some sort of opioid problem here in the town. And the same thing with this.
Small numbers and noble tasks, I get uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable. Dwayne has from time to time says he wishes the revenue stream coming from solar to go to a certain spot. I just get uncomfortable taking revenues and saying they go to a spot. I'm actually wondering whether the two that we have identified and moved to a certain spot should even enter into our budget.
That's a good question. I'm not sure that they should, and I would leave that to the accountants to tell us.
Right.
I have no problem at all, at least for the first year of this, just sliding that into an account. The check has to come from us, so it have to come into our account somehow.
I don't think it's gonna last long though, because I think I read that, there's gonna be a deposit on nips as well as like wine bottles and stuff in 2024.
Yep.
So I would assume people will start returning them when they have to pay a deposit
People
on
gonna
them.
return a little.
Who knows?
Well, we'll see. That's a good point, and I think you're right. But interestingly enough, the first payment, it certainly has not cut down. The increased cost has not cut down in the use, because it went from $3,600 to $4,400 in our. So
And that is all revenue as specific to Deep River, right?
that's specific to Deep River, spread it around the state. So the rate, Go figure.
It's a lot of tracking.
It's a lot of, what do you
Wow.
call them, little, what was the one that you see all the time? Goes in, goes fireballs, a lot of fireballs.
Other than conversation, I don't think there's any action needed on the Board of Finance unless the Board of Finance wishes to congratulate the selectmen on their thinking process, but I don't think there's anything we need to do. It's a small enough number. It's not in the budget, or
Well, I think I'm bringing it here because I was under the impression any money that comes in, we need, if it's gonna come out, it has to come through you guys.
but that was my question. Does it even enter into the budget? So
Well,
we'll create a line
I'm okay
item
with it
revenue
not.
and expenses. All right.
I'm okay with it not, because it's a flush, really. It's, comes in, it comes out, it goes out. This one might not. The opioid one definitely will just go straight, come in and go straight out. This one, it depends on what the actual cost is going to be.
So what are we doing with the opioid? Do we haven't recognized that as a revenue stream, have we yet? And we haven't recognized it as an expense yet. Will we need to add that to our budget?
I don't know. We don't have a fixed number that we can count on, so I don't know how we can.
We have an assumption of what it's supposed to be, and we could, what's that, Greg?
I was gonna say, don't you have a revenue line just for unpredefined miscellaneous revenues?
Miscellaneous revenues.
At least it's.
Okay, so I get miscellaneous revenues, where's my miscellaneous expenses?
It'll be in your audit, so.
But I do believe in the audit process that they will remove it from the miscellaneous revenue line and put it into the grants lines that we have, so it'll show up separately from the revenue as it presently is. Because we don't have a designated line yet into the budget that we've proposed for that. So right at this point, it would be in the miscellaneous revenue. And as far as the expenditures, we haven't designated per se yet what the specific expenditure is going to be.
Yeah.
Probably should go down there with all the other contributions. There.
I will
Well,
keep track.
Let's put it this way. This particular one, I'm suggesting to you that, and I haven't seen any real negatives, so we're gonna try to do this if we need
Usually
to.
we'll make assumption what the revenue is, and then we'll match it with the expense. So
We'll come back to you
Which
guys
is
with the
what
advice.
it is what it is, so. Yeah, so, Board of Finance, I'm gonna assume that you're all nodding approval that we can move forward for this. All right, I guess keep on going. Want to keep on, have other
I got
things to
nothing
chat about? You wish, you had indicated last month that there was a potential for a special call of the Board of Finance to talk about how you're going to treat.
Oh, ARPA. Yeah, let's see how that plays out. I'm hopeful that we will have received all of our requests by the end of this month. And then we can distribute those all to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen can review in early November and maybe bring to you guys in late November. We will see how that goes. We've received more requests now than we have money.
Really?
So there will be some difficult decisions to make.
More requests than Tommy's 1.3, 1.4?
Yep, so if we get some higher interest, maybe we can supplement everybody, but, yeah. There's a lot of folks that some of these are nonprofits that were dramatically affected by COVID. Others are,
Okay. In that conversation, are dollars identified in conversations you have had with us about a possible loan grant?
Yes,
Yes.
that's a request from me.
Yes.
That's part of this program. We're gonna set aside a fixed amount of money for that program. We have not received requests for those grants yet,
Okay.
but we're gonna set aside a fixed amount of money for it so that we can, depending on the number of requests that we get, we'll be able to utilize towards that.
Okay.
I didn't wanna start having people make requests for grants that we didn't have fund. I don't know yet if the town's gonna approve that or not, so.
Makes sense. Okay. I guess it is good that we have more I guess it is good that we have more requests than we have downloads. I guess.
Actually, I think the opposite. I
That's
wish we
obvious.
did not.
Sure.
I wish we did
not.
Yeah. But it's good, and, you know, we have a good amount of money and we can utilize this, I think, for good, for public safety, for COVID relief and for economic development, so.
Were there many businesses that were, you know, looking for?
Only a few. I think when we start the grant program,
Yeah.
there will be more, because there will be, we can go to we will actually solicit from businesses, were you affected by COVID? You're gonna have to prove how you were affected by COVID, with, you know, numbers prior to COVID, numbers during COVID. So I think we will see then that especially our restaurants were dramatically affected by that.
An item that you had indicated to me that you were going to at least update is on the new firearms for police.
Thank you, I did forget about that. The state of Connecticut recently, again, strongly recommended, the state police are changing all of their firearms to, I don't know enough about guns to be able to tell you what they're changing from to Glocks. That's a different manufacturer. They've asked and recommended that the local police do the same. So our police have put together a budget for 4 new firearms at a cost of approximately $3,000. Once we,
Do they trade in the old ones?
yes,
Okay.
trade them in. Actually, a couple of the officers have requested to purchase them. So they're just going to purchase them for the trade-in value. I think the trade-in, that $3,000 comes to the actual expense. The trade-in was, for the 4 guns, was in the vicinity of $1,200, $1,241, something like that.
And that is the sidearm, that's what you talk about, sidearm, that they carry one on the job.
What I'm thinking on it is similar to some of our other line items that would come into the equipment line, but the cost of this would probably push that line over ultimately. So I think in the past, we've looked at that and said, well, let's just know that we're probably going to go over at some point during the year, rather than try to move money into it now, where it's early in the season. Just know that we're going over.
That seems to make sense. Do you wish to talk about the school roof? The overage there?
Thank you, good job. The school roof. Remember, we got a grant to help us with that. We put in $25,000. We got a $157,000 grant from the state to finish that program. That was based on the estimate that we had to finish the project. Over the course of time, through the lack of materials, the availability of materials, the last portion of that roof was over the library. That was originally, that section was supposed to be $25,000. It came in at $32,000. It's about a $7,000 overage. That was last year's project. That was begun and bid and all that. We went to bid on that last year. So I'm just recommending that we utilize last year's surplus to utilize that. That can either come out of the unspent money in our town buildings or other kind of surplus from last year.
Seems to make sense.
Yeah.
Seems to make sense. The only reason I wonder if it makes sense, and we have to work with the auditors. It's a capital item. We're about to take an expense and to fund the capital, so in either way, we're going to have to spend it out of some line item.
Yeah. Yes, we will.
We'll talk with the auditors.
So I didn't have nothing. I had 2 more that I forgot about. I didn't write them down. Sorry. Thank you, Bud, for that. That's why.
That was also last year's.
That was last year's budget. That won't come out of this year. It'll come out of last year.
Okay, good. Well, good. Does anyone have any additional questions for the selectmen? Directions?
None for me.
No, they decided.
Which brings up our budget, which you just received minutes ago. This goes through October, which is what, fourth month? Okay. In our budget. So we would see about 33%. We would expect to see a line item, assuming they're evenly spent, about 33%, 66 left. I'm not seeing anything particularly jumping out. I must offer that the Board of Finance does jump out. I assume that the jumping out is we have paid the auditors approximately $13,000, so I assume they will be here soon.
And but with that, they do a billing cycle, and so at this point, we're paying, the town portion is paying in our share of it at this point, and then I will be billing out the school's portion and the WPCA portion, so it's all in alignment, it will all fall into place.
So this is what do we budget? We just budget the town portion, right?
Correct.
So this is the entire audit number, not just the town's portion that's here?
So, again, let me just repeat that. So I will get in an invoice and I will put forth as much to what the town needs to pay up until the point that the town has expended their entire amount. And then I will bill out the school their portion and the WPCA their portion.
So once the 22.5.
So it's progress billing.
22 is the town's portion of the total audit cost.
And then it'll go to the school
Right.
and WPCA.
Correct.
What's the total audit bill? I can't remember. 60, something like that?
No,
Can't remember.
no, I'll have to get you the number, I can't give you the exact number.
That is the town's portion. All right. And it makes sense that we're paying that.
But we don't expect to go over the 22.5. Right?
No.
Okay.
That number it reflected what the town was paying, plus some additional items that they would help us with.
Yeah.
Essentially, this capital is one of them. So, continue to glance. Let's continue to glance.
Yeah, I mean, it affects if whether we are in a state single audit or a federal audit, so there's that little room.
How about accounting and website software, which is a new line item, I believe, this year, right? We have pretty much, is that a timing issue?
So with the accounting software, as far as the particular accounting software that I use, I pay that in full at the beginning of the year, so it's not amortized over the course of the year.
It's a timing issue, okay. That makes sense. Especially, I see we spend I forget the timing, but we pay our Essex dog run obligation, I think, once a year early.
Yes,
so.
that's in the same scenario.
We've virtually spent no capital yet. Capital in this budget yet. It's just an observation.
Yep.
Which sort of brings up, I use the word befuddled, I know Kathy is willing to tolerate befuddled. Our auditors pointed out to us that we had received authority to spend large amounts of money in prior budgets, which we did not spend. They are challenging whether we have the authority received a year ago to spend it into the future. And they have recommended that we set up a capital and non-reoccurring account to move those things which will have a approval but a long expenditure tail. And they have sent to Kathy, and she has shared with me a couple of their recommendations, and therefore I'm befuddled. They seem to contradict each other, etc. The only offer I can give to you is we're meeting with them on Friday, and we will do better. We had, at last month's, we said we were going to do better, and at this month's, we would come forward with a resolution to take to the town and dollars that need to be moved into the capital account. I'm sorry, can't do it, but it's something to look forward to. It is very confusing, and there's no reason you should know the confusing. Take the fire truck. We have one fire truck, which we said was 800, we budget 800, we paid 400. What does that mean? Do you put the other 400 in the capital account? Do you put the entire 800 in the capital account? Where's the money coming from in the capital account to pay for it? It's awfully confusing, so hopefully we'll do better next time, and I won't be as befuddled. So, I apologize for befuddling. Any other questions on budget? Any budget items? I see no reason for us to be panicking about budget. I think we're doing fine.
Can I just ask about the boiler project for the elementary school?
Sure.
It looks like you're overexpended by $20,000.
That's in the capital?
No, I was back under page 6.
Yeah,
Oh.
and capital, general capital government. Right? Or where are you looking at?
It's under redemption of debt.
I will look at that. I will further look at that.
Oh, here, sorry. Yeah. Should not have been, that project was, yeah, I'm gonna guess there was something was, filed.
How much do we borrow to do the boiler?
Because that's just, all we're doing is paying back a loan.
Is that
on
number
it.
right? 20, even the 29, is that the correct number?
Yeah, we borrowed, I don't say it was $100 and something thousand.
That's what I thought, it was 100 something thousand, that seems odd.
It should be coming up.
For 5 years?
It should be very close to ending.
I think there's one more.
Yeah, that should be very close to ending, because that was,
I think it's due in
and
July.
actually, that's something that will be interesting this year with the cost. We've fired up the furnace, so we retained the oil burner in the school under the assumption that commodities, or who knows what that cost is going to be, and I wanted the flexibility of either natural gas or oil, depending on costs. This year, we may find out, I just read an article the other day that they're expecting the natural gas supply to Connecticut will be short, and we might see rolling blackouts or something like that. That should not impact the elementary school heating system because we have the oil backup.
That boiler, as far as it originated in 2016 for $200,000.
200,000.
And we're making our last payment on July 29th, so it'll be like $28,574.
So therefore, we can assume the 50 that we've spent already would be in error.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good catch, yeah. Last item I offer to you is, there's an empty seat amongst us, and there have been several folks who have come forward. Actually, we've done some attempting to do some recruiting type things, but 4 have come forward, and Angus and I are interviewing a fellow on Friday. Interviewing may be the wrong word to use. From time to time, people say, I'd be interested in Board of Finance, then when they find out the obligation, the time obligations, they have said, I'm not able to serve that. So we wanted to make sure that people knew what their obligations would be, particularly for time, and the kind of things we deal with. So we bring them in and we have a casual conversation with folks about whatever they want to talk about, whatever we want to talk about.
It was no casual conversation you had with me. It was a 3rd degree.
I actually thought it was extremely good. That's the way I talk to everybody. No wonder my family gets annoyed at me sometimes. So anyhow, but it is more casual because at that time we weren't aware that the Board of Finance was going to replace their own, which brings up the second aspect of this. We nurtured for the longest while, and since it was an elected position, the selectmen would appoint, okay? And we stumbled upon that the Board of Finance replaces their own until the next municipal election. So, that is what we will do here. There are 4 or 5 folks, and I think you will find them all very capable folks. Okay? It is going to be a difficult decision. Would you like to interview them? And if you would you like to interview them on 2 nights, 1 night? 4 or 5 interviews in 1 night could wear you out, but it is doable. So, any thoughts on how you'd like to proceed? We would have to call a special meeting, because the town thinks that whenever we get together, it is special. And we will then go into executive session. Certainly we will not invite others to film this while we're chatting with those people. And I remind you, we can't make a decision in executive session. I suggest we can get awfully close to it, but we cannot make an official decision in executive session. So Board of Finance, what say you? What if we set up 2 nights in November when these folks can join us, and we'll spend hour and a half both nights, and somewhere we'll come to agreement on who we think it is? Sound like a nod? I got a nod, and John is at least moving his head.
Yeah. Sounds about right. Yeah. One night would be too much, I think.
It is arguable that we could do this by Zoom if you would prefer. Well, some present, some Zoom, I do not know.
I would suggest against that only because
I prefer in person all the time, but if those nights we call and you are someplace else. All right, that is where Joyce and I will proceed with setting up appointments with these folks. And I think you'll be very impressed with these folks. It's going to be a tough decision. So
That's a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
Nice problem to have.
it is a nice problem to have. That is exactly right. It is exactly right.
and we're gonna ask most of them to volunteer for other roles if they do not.
Each one of them will get the Deep River Board of Finance take-home game. They'll get to be on another board.
Constellation Prize.
All right, folks. Any other business that you would like to discuss? Hearing none, can I have a recommendation?
Recommendation to
Recommendation. Can I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.